Sources of history. Let us look at the importance or the rationale behind the sources of history. The sources of history simply talks about where do we get history facts from. You understand? So historical knowledge is often gotten from what? The sources of what? Of history. For example, if you want to make an history research, you have to get your facts. Your literature will be from what? From the sources of what? Of history. So the sources of history are divided into two segments, which are written and unwritten sources. So let's take a look at the unwritten sources of history. Let's talk about, we have the oral sources. Oral sources of history. When we talk about the oral sources of history, we talk about oral history and oral tradition. If you talk about oral history, you're simply making references to getting evidences from people who were participants of a particular event. Let's say, for example, in the course of the Nigerian Civil War, which took place in 1967, or during the amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914, you will likely meet people who were alive as at that time. So meeting with these people, they will be able to give you ideas about what happened at that particular time. Furthermore, other oral forms of oral history are stories from literature, drama, and the rest. Then we also talk about folk tales. And all these things involve around stories. So it's simply passing the information through what? Through communication. Let's also talk about oral tradition. Oral tradition is simply passing history from a particular generation to the other. Let's take, for example, in Nigeria today or in Africa, it is presumed that the Europeans were the ones who enslaved Africa, and this has been passed from one generation to the other, and it is still being acceptable to date. So oral tradition is simply passing of history from one generation to the other. It is very pertinent or important for us to note that history knowledge is often gotten from written sources, and there are diverse written sources of history which are usually gotten from newspapers, gotten from journals, gotten from inscriptions. In those days, in the Stone Age and in prehistoric times, when you make references to the hieroglyphics writing, where the Sumerians and the Egyptians were writing on what? On stones and walls or rocks or heavy stones. You understand? So this was able to preserve the history, even at that time where there were no much evidences. Their language and their writings were able to provide enough evidence. So written sources is very important in writing history, and most especially in the reconstruction of African history, it is very important for written history. Note that written sources of history is very important, because history usually go with data collection, and for you to be able to collectively collect data, you need a chronological writing of date. Chronological writing of dates. Chronological writing of dates in a sequential order. Other auxiliary sources of history, which are numerous, that we all know about, are archaeology, anthropology, linguistics, and the rest. Now, it is very important for us to know that archaeological evidence in the writing of history is very important, because you'll be able to gather facts like fossils, artifacts, and the rest. For example, when it was often being doubted or the argument came up about the cradle of man, archaeological evidence was able to prove that the earliest human beings, which, for example, the Australopithecus africanus, the Homo erectus, the Homo sapiens sapiens, the Homo nix, all of these were gotten from the sources of history, from archaeology, whereby if a particular human being have died for over a decade, over a billion years, archaeology will be able to dig out this earth, and there is an instrument in science that prove how long a particular fossil bone might have what? Might have lived, which is regarded as the what? The radioactive instrument. Radioactive instrument is used to measure how long a particular what? Bone might have what? Might have existed. Thank you.